God hasn't put me on earth just to have a good time or to make a good living, but rather God's put me on earth to try to make a good life. There's been a great deal of speculation as to whether I would run for president. And if I were willing to absolutely rule that out, I could keep doing this show. But I can't make such a declaration.
All right, folks, that was the farewell to the Huckabee show on Fox by, of course, Mike Huckabee himself. Joining us now is Ramesh Ponnuru, Bloomberg View columnist and senior editor at National Review. And Ramesh, great piece, How to Fight, flashback, How to Fight a Huck. And I want to get to that in a second, but before we do, how do you think the terror attacks in Paris and, you know, the rash of attacks we've seen, none to this extent, of course, and God forbid, probably what we're going to see in the future, how will that enter into 016?
Well, you know, we have to determine how events unfold, but I think we have had a series of events from Russia's invasion of Ukraine to the rise of ISIS and now these attacks that have raised the seriousness level of the foreign policy debate and reminded Americans and others that there are active dangers in the world. I think that tends to help the more hawkish elements in American politics and to work against the Democrats and also against Senator Rand Paul.
All right, Ramesh, let's turn to your piece, Flashback, How to Fight a Huck. And how will it be different, do you think, if Mike Huckabee gets in the race this time? Of course, he's been down the road once before.
Well, last time around, he made a real point of emphasizing that he was an evangelical Christian leader and asking other evangelical Christians to vote for him on that basis. And that helped him get strong showings and win some primaries on the strength of that vote. But the problem is there aren't enough evangelicals, even in the Republican Party, for that to be a successful strategy for the Republican nomination, especially since not everybody who's an evangelical conservative is going to respond to that kind of appeal. So I guess the question in my mind is he going to follow a different path this time? Because there's no question he's got a lot of political talent, but he's got to improve on his really dismal showings among non-evangelicals if he's going to have any serious shot.
Yeah, and how might he do that? I mean, it's hard to separate yourself from yourself, and his strength, you know, seems to be to motivate that base of his.
Right. Well, look, we've had, you know, evangelical presidential candidates before. You know, we've had Tim Pawlenty, we've had George W. Bush, Rick Perry. This time we're going to have Ted Cruz, who's a conservative Protestant in all likelihood. The difference is they're not running away from their faith, but they're not campaigning on the basis of vote for me, I'm the same religion as you are. Right. That is, I think, is the kind of appeal that gives you some support. I mean, gives you a real base, makes sure that you're not in the first round of people who get eliminated, but just means you're not going to be the guy who ends up winning.
You also wrote a great piece at BloombergView.com about Mario Cuomo, the late Mario Cuomo, former governor of New York, who passed away last week, and saying that he was an eloquent spokesman for a lost cause. I think that's a very good way of putting it.
You know, it's remarkable, all the tributes to him and all the remembrances. They don't talk about how he moved American politics to the left, because he didn't. They talk about his speeches. They talk about his 1984 speech to the Democratic Convention, which was a rip-roaring denunciation of Ronald Reagan. And the thing I think is really striking, if you look back at that speech now, and I read it for the first time when he passed away, there's nothing forward-looking in it. There is no explanation of what liberalism has to offer the American people going forward. It's just, we did a lot of great things in the past, and Ronald Reagan's doing terrible things right now.
Yeah.
That was, you know, he wasn't the guy who could refurbish and rescue liberalism.
Yeah, well, without any disrespect to him, certainly the media tends to give someone like that a break as compared to someone of his stature on the right. We know the double standard that exists. Ramesh Ponnuru, always great to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much. All right. think we had a little technical difficulty there at the end. Nonetheless, very interesting, and you could read him at both BloombergView.com and, of course, at NationalReview.com. And we will be back with much, much more of the Steve Malzberg Show straight ahead, only on Newsmax Television, so don't go away.